G'day, I just thought I'd make a quick video of how to exchange out the Yamaha SR250 diaphragm, and in some cases the diaphragm will be very obviously shot, but in other cases, well, this one's very obviously shot. It could be just a pinhole like that there. I don't know if the camera's going to focus, but that there in itself is enough to give you carb issues. What's going to happen is vacuum is not going to get created in the top of the carb up here as air passes through it, and it's not going to lift properly. So you're not going to get proper jetting settings through the different RPM range because it's not going to lift as it was designed or intended to. So we sell these replacement diaphragms, which is just the rubber part itself. So I'll go through how to exchange that onto your existing slide. You can buy replacement slides, but they're really expensive, and you replace this whole kit, but that seems like quite a waste because these very rarely wear out. Jets and things can, but not the slide itself. So I will show you in this clip how to do that. Okay, so the slide itself is actually made of three components: the main metal body here, and then the rubber piece is the second part, which is a vulcanized rubber diaphragm, and then that is then held in place onto the metal part with a molded plastic part. In this case, we're going to remove the plastic part itself, and it's going to be destroyed, but that doesn't matter because this is fucked anyway. So we're going to rip that off with some pliers, and then we'll be left with a bare metal ring around here, and we'll be very careful not to damage this lip or any other surface on the metal part of itself because that body will be keeping. Okay, I'll keep the camera rolling and see how I go with removing it. So as you can see, it's not a very glamorous process taking that molded plastic piece off, and the plastic itself is quite brittle, so it can fly everywhere. Watch out for your eyes, and like I said before, be very careful not to damage this lip here. That's important for holding the replacement rubber piece in place. But now that we've got this ready, we can actually attach the new diaphragm. Now we're actually going to fasten or glue or adhere or bond the new diaphragm to the metal part here, and it's not to hold it in place, it's to stop it from rotating under use in heat if that ever happens. But I've dipped this swab here in acetone because I'm going to clean this surface for gluing, and you'll see there's quite a bit of shit on there, built up over 30 years of use, and then I'll dry that up. And then the glue that you can use, I'll apply a very small amount of glue on this surface here. It can be any glue, preferably one that can adhere to rubber, of course. In this case, I've actually purchased this special Loctite super glue, which is Powerflex, and it's a gel, which I really like instead of the runny shit, the liquid stuff. So this goes on nice and neat and pretty clean, and it's going to bond to rubber as well. You can use a 2-component glue or even a silicone or anything that you have at hand that might or that will adhere to both metal and glue. So I'll put a tiny amount of glue on here around the perimeter. Like I said, this is just to hold the diaphragm, the replacement diaphragm, the rubber piece in a... Okay, so I'll bring in the rubber part itself. You can see on one side there's text, and on the other side there's no text. Text facing up to the top of the slide, no text facing down. And then it's just a matter of trying to squeeze this onto the slide. And I mean, it's not super easy because it's quite stiff and thick rubber, but you'll see that this replacement is actually made to fill that whole metal gap here. So there's no plastic part holding the rubber part in place now. It's a single piece, a single replacement, which is really cool. Really like this design. It's a great idea. And now that that's in place, you can see it's going to function the way that the stock one does. And now it's not going to rotate either when it gets warm and slightly looser under use, because we've got that glue on there. I'll set this aside and bring in a carb to show you what we're going to do next. Okay, now that we've actually got the diaphragm itself back on the slide, we're going to place it back in the carb. I've prepared this carb here to show you what you should do. The location or the orientation of the diaphragm itself on the slide is not so important, but it's really important the orientation of the slide into the carb. And you'll see on the bottom of the slide you have 3 holes. One in the center here is for the jet needle. One is for locating a plastic guide, I guess, that sits on the top of the needle. And this other hole here is actually part of the diaphragm or the vacuum system itself. And that goes in here and needs to point at 12 o'clock towards the engine. So on the intake side of the engine, I'll rotate that around so you can see. So this is the engine side of the carb, here's the filter side, and our hole that we're lining up here is on the engine side, the one that helps with the operation of the slide and the vacuum system. So that lines up there. And on the stock diaphragm, which I'll pull this back into the frame, we have this little tab here, and that tab lines up with this cutout on the top surface of the cast carb here. And that's so that anyone, when they're working on the carb and putting the slide and the diaphragm back into it, put it back in the correct orientation. But now you and I know that the slide goes in this way, so it's not a problem for us. But thinking of any future mechanic or any future person that's going to work on this particular carb, we want to make their job nice and easy. So we're going to take a permanent marker, preferably not black, so that it's visible. And you can even take a small paintbrush with some white paint or whatever. And we're just going to place, while this is in the correct orientation, we're just going to place a small mark. You can draw an arrow, you can draw a line, whatever, right where that tab indentation is, so that anyone else knows that's the orientation that the slide and the diaphragm should be in. That's us done for this process. Then it's just a matter of putting the spring back in place and your top along with the throttle perch. And of course you want to rebuild the slide itself before you put things back together, which will include the jet needle setup and the clips and all that rigmarole. So that's us for today. Thank you for watching another instructional video by us at Jadis. Happy wrenching and happy riding. Cheers.